good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Tuli Chatterjee from the English department and the founder coordinator of LaGuardia Humanitarian Initiative. LHI celebrates global citizenship and foregrounds civic engagement by facilitating a year-long college-wide inquiry of a global issue as addressed in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Through partnership with various local and global NGOs, LHI also creates career opportunities for students while helping them translate their classroom learning into developing projects focusing on sustainable solutions for social change. On behalf of LHI family, I welcome you all today. LHI was formed with the aim of supporting LaGuardia's mission, helping students translate their classroom learning in becoming active agents in shaping a rapidly evolving society. By incorporating LaGuardia's core values, learning, diversity, opportunity, responsibility, and innovation, LHI assists students in advocating both for themselves and for the communities they belong and represent, and in turn nurture the mission of LaGuardia. This academic year, LHI has been exploring the theme of borders, home and migration, UN Sustainable Development Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions by partnering with New York NGO Make the Road and global NGO Amal Alliance. Throughout the academic year, students from 7 programs across the college have been involved in developing classroom projects, volunteering, fundraising, all with an aim to support our local and global communities, mostly undocumented immigrant and refugee communities who have been severely impacted during these unprecedented times. We were also able to award internship to our 3 students at a global NGO, Amal Alliance. Today, we are honored to have with us Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz, whose journey and work reflects the collective spirit of LaGuardia to empower others. We are equally honored to have with us Provost Dr. Paul Arcario, whose deep commitment to reflective pedagogy, students' learning, and the importance of service has tremendously shaped the work we all do every day to fulfill LaGuardia's mission. On behalf of the entire LHI family, I thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedule in joining us today. Although President Kenneth Adams could not be here with us due to a conflicting meeting that he was required to attend, he expressed his wish to be here and his excitement for having Assemblywoman Cruz with us at LaGuardia. Without much ado, I would like to invite Provost Dr. Arcario to say a few words and introduce Assemblywoman Cruz. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Tuli. Welcome, Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz. We are thrilled that you are joining us as another expression of your absolute unwavering commitment to our students and to our immigrant population and to the people of Queens that you serve. Thank you. We're really thrilled. I also want to acknowledge Professor Tuli Chatterjee, LaGuardia Humanities Initiative Committee. We have here, I hope I have everybody, Jacqueline Nava, Stefania Dinu, Esther Rosa, Rocio Reynoso, and Dima Beraktar for sponsoring this conversation with Assemblywoman Cruz. The Humanities Initiative is something that we are all so deeply proud of here, that our faculty and students reach out and serve communities that are in need. And it's a wonderful learning opportunity for our students as well. And it's about humanity. And we're very proud that you know, we represent humane endeavors in this world because it is much, much, much needed. If I may do a few words of introduction, Assemblywoman Cruz. She was born in Colombia, came to Queens at age of 9. She was a dreamer and undocumented for over 10 years. She is someone who truly understands the struggle of so many of our immigrant students, and she's committed her career to fighting for tenant protection, immigrant reform, and workers' rights. And here at LaGuardia, as most of you know, we have students coming from over 150 countries, and over 50% of our students are foreign born. We have the largest English as a second language program in New York City. And many of you don't know, when I started at this college 30 years ago, I started as an ESL faculty member. That's what I taught. And I'm very proud of that service and love working with the students so much. And I'm so glad that we are committed to providing ESL instruction to the community of Queens. Assemblywoman Cruz has really been a longtime champion of higher education and of LaGuardia Community College. And as she continues to be as the Assemblywoman for Corona, Elmhurst, and Jackson Heights. And I know many of our students are your constituents, Assemblywoman. So welcome again. Thank you for all of your support and providing time to be here with our students and faculty. And lastly, a big welcome to all of our students who are here today, and faculty and staff for joining us. Assemblywoman Cruz, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arcadio. It is a pleasure to be here. As you said, I'm not just a big supporter of higher education. I'm a huge fan of CUNY and what CUNY can do for our kids. You will hear me say this as I speak, but I am a true believer in that CUNY saved my life. And hence why I fight so hard to make sure that others have that same opportunity that I did. I am the proud representative of Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst, and I suspect a few of the folks here are my constituents. I am a graduate of John Jay College of Criminal Justice and of CUNY Law School. So I'm a double CUNY grad and a proud one. I came to New York and settled in Queens. I was undocumented for a very long time. I fled Colombia with my mom in the middle of, well, towards the tail end actually of what was the drug wars. Many people died, many people were suffering, and my mom wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to survive. She was a nurse, and when we came here, because we were undocumented like many other families, my mom became a street vendor and a volantera, which is the women that give out flyers on Roosevelt. Later on, she became a domestic worker, and now she is an early education teacher. She's a Head Start teacher and loves it. Absolutely loves it. Now is finally thinking of retirement, but she's well. And watching her and seeing what she went through gave me the grit to do what I needed to do. You know, she fought so hard to make sure that I could get here into a country that would give me an opportunity that when I became a permanent resident and then later a citizen, I knew that I needed to take advantage of my educational opportunities as much as possible. You know, I came into a family, nobody knew English. I always tell the story that when I was a kid, I'd do my homework with a dictionary next to me. And because I came from another country, I couldn't tell the difference between the word can as in a can of soda or can as in I can do it. And I would often make mistakes in school and feel bad. And I had a heavy accent and I would feel bad because kids would make fun of you for a number of reasons. But through that hard work and perseverance, you know, I was able to really succeed, to become a fantastic writer. And I say that because I think sometimes we got to be proud of ourselves and to develop into a lawyer and later a politician. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. One of the things I love to do in events like this is give people an opportunity to ask questions. And I know that we have 109 people, but we'll figure out a way. So at some point I will be stopping because I want to answer questions. It's not often that you get to meet someone who has lived the experiences that perhaps you're living and get to ask him, how did you get there? And so after high school, I went to John Jay, and I was undocumented while I was going to John Jay. And to me, this is important because I was a dreamer while I was going to John Jay. I was working full time and weird schedules around the clock so I could make school work, and I made it work. And I had this vision, and I say vision because the reality is I was still undocumented. How I thought I was going to go be a police officer was beyond me, but I wanted to be the next Olivia Benson from Law & Order Special Victims Unit, and that was my thing. I am, by the way, obsessed with the show, so if you follow me on social media, you'll see a lot of postings about that show. And so I had the opportunity to meet a wonderful Jackson Heights attorney who helped me navigate the system, helped me become a permanent resident, and then later a citizen, pro bono. That means he didn't charge me. And he helped my mom when I was eventually able to ask for her. And that gave me this need and want to get involved with the law. Because what I saw was the ability to change not just the life of my client and the person in front of me, but so many other lives of their family members here back home. And I just wanted to fight for people like my mom, for people like me, so that they wouldn't have to struggle the way we did. I went to CUNY Law because I felt that it provided the reality is best bang for my buck when it came to giving me a good education, and I wouldn't be a broke lawyer forever. And so it worked for me, and I went there with the vision that I was going to go be an immigration attorney. Life, the universe, and God had different plans for me. I practiced a little while. When I got out, I ended up doing housing. I did labor law. I worked in government. And so for 10 years, I was doing completely different work than what I had envisioned I would be doing when I got out of law school. But it was really good work. I helped, many people here probably know what the municipal ID is. I helped implement that law. I also helped write and pass the legislation that made New York City into a sanctuary city. I worked a lot on ensuring that, I don't know if you guys remember, maybe it was about 5-6 years ago when there was a surge, that first surge of children coming to the border and unaccompanied, and they didn't have lawyers. So we worked with the city council to get money into our budget to guarantee these kids, these children, a lawyer, because in immigration court, you could be 2 years old going in front of a judge. What do you know? And so we worked a lot on that. And then as politics always has it, one person leaves a seat, another person runs. And there was a reshifting in my community of the powers and leadership. And I felt, I had always felt a call for running for office, but it was always, and I'm sure many women, and especially women of color can relate to this, I felt I wasn't ready. I hadn't done enough yet. And so I used to say to myself, oh, when I retire, I'm going to get ready. And that's going to be my retirement plan. After I do everything I need to do, when I'm fully ready, I'll run for office. And then around those years, give a year, take 1 or 2, is when Trump became president. And I felt that I was very privileged. I am admittedly a white passing Latina. I am educated. I have walked the halls of government, worked with very powerful people. And I felt like, what am I going to do with all of this? My people are about to get attacked because I knew it. I knew all the things that everybody's like, oh, no, he's crazy. He's just promising these. He's not going to do it. I know they were all coming our way. And so I thought to myself, what am I going to do with all this power to defend and to fight for my people? And Councilmember Danny Drum, who is a friend of LaGuardia, many of you know him, came to me and said, I want you to run. I need someone to be my partner. And that's also because the person who held my seat before, he was not a great elected official. He's not in the city council. He's still not a great elected official. And so Danny often say that he needed someone who not only he could really work with, but who understood the community in ways that others haven't been able to, and that continue to carry a lot of his legacy. And so I checked in with mommy, with my gut, and I prayed on it, and I made the decision to run, but it was not easy because I was not the favorite of the powers that be, of the party of the powerful people. So we ran an absolute grassroots campaign. Everything from, remember when I said my mom used to be a street vendor? So one of the things that we did to kind of collect money is, during that time, it was the World Cup. And so we actually had a World Cup watch party at a restaurant, and my mom sold empanadas. Think about that. And that money went to the campaign. And so my mom is like, I'm going to go out and get flyers for you again. So we did that. And so while we didn't have a lot of powerful people supporting us, we had some wonderful grassroots community members who believed that our community deserved better, that we really needed someone who understood what it was like to not know where their next rent payment was coming, to not know what it was like to have preventative health care, to understand what it was like to have your rights violated as an immigrant or as a woman. And, you know, we ran with a clear vision of what we were going to do, a statement of experience, and frankly, to make history, because never in the history of New York State had there been a dreamer who made it into office. And I have to be honest, I was very reluctant to tell my story because it's a very painful story of not knowing where your next rent is coming from, of fearing deportation, of not knowing if mom is late from work coming home, is it that she got picked up by ICE? Like, all of those things were very painful. But I also understood that just like I had lived those experiences, there were many young people still living them. And if I would come out and be able to face it and be able to tell my story of success, that would mean a lot for other people. And so I did that. And I have to tell you, I did it not caring whether I won or lost. And granted, it was great to win. But when I first started out, I started out with the idea of, well, if I win, that's fantastic. But if I don't, I've at least began opening the doors for others like me to do the same. And it's going to change the conversation. And at a time when Trump is president, who better than a dreamer from, for anybody who's watched the Samantha Bee show, she actually did an entire skit about the girl from Queens, the dreamer from Queens running to make Trump angry. And so, like, think about what that means politically and for the community. And so I got elected. We won. I don't think I can say this word here, but we whooped some, and it was fantastic. And it was, you know, and it was just exhilarating. But we knew that that's where the hard work would begin. And so I am lucky enough to have a fantastic team. My chief of staff is also a double CUNY grad. She's here sitting somewhere. I have a district director who's also a CUNY grad. I have constituent services, two young people who are also CUNY grads. And I think Alex, who does our comps, is also, like, my team is all CUNY grads. And they're young people from the community, eager, who love to do the work, and who helped me create history over the 2.5 years that followed. I'm now in my second term. I just got reelected in November. But during those 2.5 years, we've been able to help push driver's licenses for all, the Jose Peralta Dream Act, fundamental changes to our housing and tenant protections, the Excluded Workers Fund that was passed recently to help all of our undocumented folks who didn't get help from the federal government during the pandemic. The Child Victims Act, I just passed the Rape is Rape law that redefines the meaning of rape to also include oral and anal sex, which, believe it or not, is actually not part of the law right now. So there are many victims out there without justice. And I have been working to make sure that we are allocating funding that comes from the state to the most neediest of our community members. You know, during my first year, actually every year, I've fought for legal services and made sure that we got $10 million each year to make sure that everybody who goes through a removal proceeding can access an attorney. I funded things, you know, in the community, but my most recent and frankly one of my most joyful moments was being able to pass to push for $50 million into the Nourish New York program. And it's a program that the governor created, but was frankly bound to run out, and we put more money into it, that took the food that was being left untouched, left over, and basically thrown out during the pandemic in our farms in upstate New York, and pay them to bring them downstate to the different food pantries. Because during the pandemic, we saw that the food insecurity in our community grew tenfold. You know, one of the things that my office had to do, and I think it's because we literally understand what real hunger and not knowing where your next rent is going to come from, was that we turned the office into a food pantry. While everybody was able to stay home, care for themselves, we made a different choice. We opened up a food pantry in partnership with World Central Kitchen and Chef Jose Andres. And between the middle of March and the middle of September, we gave out 250,000 meals and boxes of food. And we would have, I'm talking about lines of like 11 blocks long of people waiting for food at the height of the pandemic. We gave out thousands of pieces of PPE, visited businesses, and my chief, Robin, had this fantastic idea of creating a baby pantry. And so during the pandemic, we had a diaper, baby food, formula, and anything that everybody else would bring us of baby products. We were the only elected official in the state, I think, to definitely in New York City, but possibly in the state, to be doing that during the pandemic. I think we served about 2,000 families. At first, we actually would do like come and pick them up days. And one day, so many people showed up. We had 500 people show up. The cops shut us down. So we had to start doing it by appointment because the need was just there. It was terrible. The other thing that we've been focusing on is Corona, which is the epicenter. Corona, Jackson Heights, and Elmhurst have been the epicenter of the pandemic here in New York. Corona has the lowest rate of vaccination while also having the highest rate of death and infection in Queens. And so the government has continuously ignored us. I team up with a couple of other electeds of my colleagues to bring in more vaccinations to Corona. And we have seen a significant increase in the rate since then. It's still not enough, but it's still significant. And we've been educating folks and teaming up with folks. And so that's where I have been doing, how I got here. And I am going to stop now. And would love to answer any questions that folks have about CUNY, my work, my neighborhood. I love what I do. There are days that are very difficult because it's long hours and I don't get to be a regular person ever again. But I also understand the privilege that I have in being able to push for things that people need. I'll give you just one example. During the campaign, I met this woman when I first ran who used to collect cans. And I became like infatuated with her because my mom and I used to collect cans when I was little to make ends meet. And so she would bring her daughter by the campaign office. She was just super, super nice. In the middle of that pandemic, I get a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning. Her husband had died the night before of COVID. She had no idea what to do. This woman barely spoke any English. While she was a permanent resident, she had been that through her husband and didn't really have like the skills or, and frankly, the wherewithal emotionally to do anything. She called me and I was able to do a bunch of things for her that had I not been in this position of power, I never would have been able to do. I would have just been like her calling other folks, depending on them. But I was able to, within 3 calls, get her set up with a burial home, pick up the body and make sure that we were helping her. And we're still working with her on other issues. But it's that position of real privilege and power to help people that even on those days where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted, it reminds me that we're in the right place.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz. This is such amazing insight, and all of your experiences, that you bring here are super inspiring. And of course, I want to thank you for being such a great advocate for the Jackson Heights community and for just the community of New York City in general. I know that the students that are here hearing you talk will utilize this conversation to really propel themselves to reach their goals and will act as a motivation to create positive change through their own advocacy. So thank you so much for speaking with us today. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A component of the session. So for our students, please go ahead and type your questions on the chat section and we will select them and read them out loud for you. So we're getting a lot of really great comments, very inspiring, bravo. How wonderful that you can help people with such difficult matters. I want to be you when I grow up. So these are great comments. Go right ahead, everybody, and put your questions in the chat, and we will get to them shortly. In the meantime, we can go ahead and start off with the first question. The first question is, I am just curious about your views about what is happening in Colombia right now.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. I've talked about this piece very few times publicly, but I've said it before. I've had several members of my family during the 80s and early 90s disappeared or threatened or arrested by the national police. And in Colombia, works a little bit different because you have it's a federalized government. So the police is a national entity rather than city state or the way that it is here in the States. And it's very much like the army. And so, everything that's happening felt too close to home. But I think what worries me the most, I have family back home. I have cousins, uncles, my grandfather, my stepmom. I have people that I love and that are affected by everything that is happening. And so while I need them to be safe, I also understand why people are so angry. And for people who are not familiar with it, the reason why there's civil unrest is because the government, they borrowed a ton of money to supposedly meet the needs of the country and its people during the pandemic, except some of that money went to pay lawyers for God knows what. Some of that money doesn't seem to really have been helping people because they can't seem to get it together when it comes to vaccination. And now that the payment is due because they borrow that money, the government, the president had proposed, he actually had to withdraw it after so much pressure, but had proposed a restructuring of the tax system where they were going to begin taxing things that were never taxed before, like they call it la canasta familiar, or the basic food group, like eggs, meat, milk, things that had never been taxed before. And for us, it's like, oh, taxes on food, like we're used to that. But back there, it's not. They were also imposing taxes in the middle income folks and restructuring how they do healthcare. So it was taxes, the healthcare. Oh, and on utilities. There's never been taxes on utilities before because utilities are generally owned by the government. And so they were proposing light, gas, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you have a country where minimum wage is less than $300, but a 75% of the country is living under poverty level, and you're not increasing the taxes on the corporations, people are going to be pissed, and rightfully so. And they can't get a vaccine, they can't get help from it's just horrible. So people went out into the streets and began protesting, and there have been accounts, and I know some folks that are on the ground. One of my cousins is amateur photographer, if you will. He's been out in the streets documenting what's happening, and he's told me stories of women coming forward saying that they've been raped by the police, of people just indiscriminately being shot. And so you all may remember the BLM protests last year and how often the clashback was like, well, they're destroying private property. And then like, even in the remote case that was happening, the response is never to kill someone. The response for destruction of private property is not to rape a woman. Like that's just doesn't fit in my brain. And so I'm just hoping that the more noise we make and the more international pressure there is, the government will get it together and just really do what they were meant to do, which is protect its citizens.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you on that. Especially during COVID times, this is a really dangerous situation. One of the students is actually asking if, given the situation, you would ever consider returning and running for office in Colombia in the future.
I don't know, because I'm a mama's girl and I need to live wherever my mom is at. And I think that's the main one. Like I have created my life here. I have a boyfriend, my sisters, etc. Everybody's here, and those things can always be moved. If my mom were to move, that's something I like. I don't know how I would feel about it. It's also a very different system of politics, a very corrupt system of politics. The last woman who tried to run for president of Colombia, just to give you a taste of it, was kidnapped and disappeared for 5 years. So it's not an easy place to kind of make your mark as a politician, but it's not something I've been asked that before. It's not something I completely put out of my head.
Sure, thank you. And I'm positive that there's a lot of difficult moments here within the United States as
Yeah.
well. And then one of the students is asking you how you manage to keep yourself motivated during phases that you feel you want to give up.
I have a wonderful therapist. I recommend that. I always say that to folks. I have been in therapy on and off since I was 18 years old. I've talked about this openly before. I'm a survivor of child sex abuse, and one of the things that has kept me alive, other than CUNY, has been going to therapy and really working on the repercussions that has had in my life. I think when I have those really tough moments, or when I really I don't want to go to an event, or I don't want to do something, I also rely on my team. My chief of staff jokingly always tells me, well, nobody told you to run for office. We could have been having a hot girl summer on a beach somewhere, but here you are. And so humor, and also understanding when I'm listening to myself when I'm burning out, when I feel like I look at the calendar and I'm like, this is too much, I'm not doing this. And I'll get eye rolls and I'll get pushbacks because I have to do those things. So I'm like, just move it to another week. I need some time off. And sometimes my time off is to literally sit, have a glass of wine, open the door to my terrace and just sit there and listen to music.
Absolutely. That's some advice that I would recommend to students sometimes. I mean, find something that really de-stresses you, especially during finals week. You are going to be put in these situations for students. So take a little bit of advice from Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz on how to de-stress and keep your motivation up. So we have from a staff member a question. What would you like to see the Biden administration do to assure the security of undocumented people in the U.S. today?
Actually pass comprehensive immigration reform would be amazing. Why don't, I don't think there's if we, with a majority everywhere and a majority with a tiebreaker, can get immigration reform, then what are we doing? Why are we in this business? Why are we pushing so hard? I think that's the key, and comprehensive immigration reform needs to include not a 50-year or 100-year path to U.S. citizenship, because sometimes when you look at some of the requirements, it feels like that. It's like, you know what, by the time I have grandkids, perhaps they'll become a citizen. But something that's truly and realistic and understands that the reason why many of us are here is because some time ago, the US government decided it would be a fantastic idea to meddle in foreign policy. And so if we had a hand at screwing things up, then we need to have a hand at giving people an opportunity to stay here and really contribute. And so that means a path to being a legal permanent resident, real something that isn't some sort of bandage like DACA. Like DACA was the best we could do under executive order, but that's not enough. That leaves people in a limbo, and that leaves many people outside of getting that benefit. Some incentive for people to immigrate. That have certain skills that we may need in the country, while also recognizing that there are skills we already have here. There's a ton of farm workers that have been keeping us alive, literally, and the least we can do for them is give them a path to citizenship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I have a question here from Karen. What politicians do you admire most and why?
So depends on the day and the kind of inspiration I need. I have a friend, she's not like super famous because she's also an assemblywoman, but she lost her seat. She is a Democrat running in a very Republican state of Florida. and Cindy Polo, who I adore, and we became very good friends, actually through our work for the Biden campaign. And one of the things that she taught me, not that she taught me, I already knew it, but that she helped me see it in a different way. It's the power when women in politics support each other. Because believe it or not, if sometimes when you see a lot of us taking pictures and just smiling, we don't always get along. That's for the cameras. And that's the little secret that a lot of people don't know. Cindy taught me that things don't have to be that way. That you can build a bigger stage if you think that we may not fit here. So like if you're doing the work and you're like, oh, is there enough space for the both of us? You know what? I'm gonna make that stage bigger. And there's going to be enough for all of us to shine. So I admire her a lot for that perseverance, and I think she's just a complete badass. I also really appreciate what it had to take for women like the vice president, for women like Warren, to make that decision to throw themselves into the wolves' den, and try to represent our country in the way that they did. You know, I'm always gonna love Hillary. She sent me a birthday card once, and I'm like, I still keep it in a note because, you know, she could have been our president, but here we are. So, you know, I think depending on the day, I draw from different things. And it's important to say that while I admire all of them, we're all human. And there are things about the way that we do our jobs or whatever else it is that I may not agree with. I don't always agree with everything that the vice president has done now or in the past. I don't always agree with everything that that Hillary has done. I won't always agree with my friend in what she has done, but it's that understanding that you're a human, even if you're a politician. You can have wonderful things about you and things that are not so wonderful.
Great question and great answer. Thank you so much. Okay, so I have a question from Kristen. What was your experience in the process from becoming a dreamer to citizen?
It was scary. It was expensive for me because while I didn't have to pay for the legal services, I still had to pay for immigration fees. I still had to pay for all the things that everybody else takes for granted, like financial aid. And I just didn't have access to that. So I had to basically work to support myself plus go to school. Back then I had married my high school sweetheart. I was with him for like 11 years. He petitioned for me. We were able to go through that entire process. A couple of years after becoming a permanent resident, become a citizen, and then be able to do the same for my mother.
So a question kind of relating to this is, one student is mentioning that a good friend of his is very motivated to continue his education, and he's about to graduate from high school, but he is undocumented. Do you have any websites or types of resources that can help him to continue the next level of work, given the circumstances that you went through and that maybe you utilized while you were attending CUNY?
So while I was attending CUNY, we didn't have any of these resources. Like back then, you'd go to my guidance counselor in my high school barely knew how to guide me as an undocumented kid. And I will be honest, I'm also a go-getter, so I wasn't waiting for people to come to me. And while John Jay was very good at certain things, it was not necessarily great at supporting me as an undocumented student. Now, a lot of that has changed in the last 15, 16 years that I've been out of undergrad. And that's also because there's money to do other things. There's a mentality that has changed around how do we have conversations about someone being undocumented. And so my recommendation would be to have your friends start with places like Make the Road. They have wonderful programs that help kids, and depending on where your friend lives, of course, that help young dreamers figure out their next steps in how to get into college, what do you want to do, how do you pay for it, and they'll help you and guide you through applying for the Jose Peralta Dream Act and figuring out all those pieces.
I love that you said that. Actually, the LaGuardia Humanitarian Initiative, which is a committee of faculty and staff that work here, we are actually fundraising for Make the Road, and we're fundraising for Mile Alliance, as my colleague and founder of LHI mentioned earlier. So definitely for those students out here that are listening and that have been fundraising for Make the Road, keep that in mind, that you are making a difference in somebody else's life. It is definitely something that contributes to making a positive impact within the community. So for those of us that helped us fundraise, thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you're sharing this with the students as well, so that they can see the direct impact that their contributions have. All right, so we have a question from Priscilla. VP Kamala Harris has quoted her mother's word of support. With the relationship you have with your mother, can you share any words of support she has given you?
Wow. Okay, so here's the thing about Colombian moms. Their words of support are usually like, are you scolding me? Are you supporting me? What are we doing here? So I'll tell you what she did when I decided to run for office, or when I was trying to make the decision to run for office. I went to her house. I have a conversation with her. She's washing dishes, and I've told this story before because it's typical. Like, my mom is just, I love her, but it's like the tact is just not there. And she turns around, and I said to my mom, I said, Mom, she loves Danny, so she knew Danny's like, Danny would like for me to run. Here's what's in front of me. What do you, what do you think? What should we do? She turns around, she looks at me, and she goes, and I'm gonna say it in Spanish and then in English, so that the Latinos can understand the sarcasm. She's like, ¿Usted cree que yo hice todo lo que hice para que usted ahora decida ser mediocre? And I was just like, did I do everything that I did for you to now decide to be mediocre? I was like, Ma. And she's like, no, our conversation needs to be, I'm doing this. Can you help me? And how are we going to do it? And it was such a moment, like, because granted, she was right. And I always tell her the story, and she goes, I was very nice to you. I don't remember saying this, but it totally sounds like I would say that. And I'm like, but those were her words of wisdom. Did we go through everything we went through for you to now just give up? For you to not just give up. And so even on election night, even on, I called her, when did we do Rapist Rape? Last week?
Yeah.
When I came up here, this has to be the biggest bill I've ever done myself. I generally support other people, but this one was personally important to me. A friend had asked me to carry it for her, and I was very nervous and tense about debating this and how was I going to do it. And I remember calling her, and she always has this thing that she says to me, you were meant for great things. That's her line. You were meant for great things, when she's actually trying to be supportive. And so that thing is, the first statement is that thing that kind of pushes me to remember, you went through a lot. Don't give up now. And the other piece is the thing that reminds me of, you are meant to do great things for others.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much. And of course, I can definitely relate with the infamous ponte las pilas, put your batteries on. So I could definitely relate to that. Okay, so the next question is, what is your biggest or most memorable accomplishment after being elected? That's a great question.
Biggest or most memorable? I've had several big moments. I think the first biggest one was driver's licenses for all. And just, I got to bring my mother up to Albany for the argument in the assembly, and being able to turn around and say, this is going to benefit women like my mom, who for a long time, my mom basically missed every single one of the important things that I did at John Jay, because she didn't have a license and there was no way she was going to make it to places on time in the train. And just being able to be a part of that. But I have to say, my work behind the scenes to help negotiate and land the Excluded Workers Fund was one of the most emotionally and personally satisfying. And I did a lot of work and I'm doing it now with the agency, kind of like helping craft the language. What does it look like on the ground? How do we make sure that this money gets to people? How do we avoid fraud? How do we keep lawyers from getting their hands on this money to supposedly help people? And so a lot of that has been personally satisfying, because the other most memorable moment was sitting there and figuring out that we had given out 250,000 meals during the pandemic. And that we are going to help those people.
That's absolutely wonderful. And, you know, from reading your biography, from reading everything that you have accomplished, I know that it's a lot. So I know now.
I'm sorry, I thought this whole time, this is how long my day has been, that the sound was coming from here, and it's not.
The laptop.
It's been a long day.
So I actually have a few questions myself. So I think we're actually, I'm going to see if I could sneak one of my own questions in here.
Okay.
The other students' questions. What advice do you have for our students to get involved in like your work, or how can LaGuardia support you?
So when you're working with an elected or working to support an elected, there's different kinds of things you can do. There's always the campaign stuff, helping them get into office, figuring out who you're going to support, etc. There's always that piece. But I think the biggest piece is, once you get into office, supporting them to be able to do the work that they committed to doing. And so whether it's through policy research, figuring out if you can intern at their office, partnering with them. You know, I've talked to LaGuardia, and I think Claudia, you were on that call when we talked about, and I'm still trying to pitch that to anybody who will listen, the program that you guys have of providing new skills to people who lost their job during the pandemic, so that they can get back to work, even if it's under something new. I think by now I've pitched that to like 5 different people who have the power to give you money. So we'll see. You know, and so partnerships like that are always key. And when emergencies come up, for example, God forbid, we would have had a different president who continued to destroy DACA. How do we work to, you know, like working together as the college and as the elected to help support and protect the students, and the students, you know, and I think part of what you can do with an elected should also be holding them accountable. If the elected that's representing your community isn't doing their job, then, you know, you support somebody else who's going to run against them, or you call them. There's always that. You call their office and figure out why are they not supporting a certain issue that you care about and you think it's key, and you help advocate for it.
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of really great programs. One example being the CUNY Service Corps program here at LaGuardia, where we do help the community through internships. So I absolutely agree. Volunteer work, internships, that's a really great way to get involved for all of the students listening to us right now. And then one of my own questions is, what are some ways students can prepare for your type of career, right? What are maybe some, besides, you know, internships, what are some types of like community services that they can be, that students could be a part of, or, you know, any part-time jobs perhaps?
I think one of the key things is becoming a part of your community board. There's great community boards, and there's community boards that frankly do nothing. So do a little bit of research and figure out, you know, how do you want to spend your time? Becoming part of other types of committees like that, like some of our local hospitals have community engagement committees, things that give you an opportunity to kind of delve deep into the issues that you care about. I also think that preparing yourself well, financially and emotionally to run, it's important. And also, unpopular opinion, not everybody should run for office. It's not an easy job. It takes a lot out of your family, out of your own personal well-being. And if you're not ready to basically put yourself to the side when your community needs it, then you shouldn't do this. You know, I'll give you the example of during the pandemic. I was not elected to run a food pantry, but I was elected to do what my community needed during an emergency. And there wasn't even a question about it. When the opportunity came, my chief of staff basically looked at each other and said, okay, we're opening tomorrow, food pantry, we're gonna just close the office. There wasn't even a question. And so if you're not ready to do whatever your community needs during an emergency time, probably not the best job for you. There's other fantastic, altruistic, wonderfully paying jobs. Probably not, because if you're going to do good community work, it's going to be not very well paid, because that's just the way it is. But there's other things you can do. There's absolutely other things you can do to contribute to our community and our society. But running for office is very, very expensive. Emotionally, financially, I would only recommend it if you're really willing to do this, and frankly, if a voice like yours is missing in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, given that I'm a Jackson Heights resident myself, I've been following you as well. I love everything that you stand for, and I really appreciate everything, all of that advice that you're giving us. So community board is definitely something that, even I would look into, right? So after hearing you speak.
And both the community boards in our neighborhood, both 3 and 4, are fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. All right. So I think we have enough time for 1 or 2 more questions. I have
and
one.
If you want to see some of yours, go ahead.
Thank you. All right. So students, if you have 1 or 2 more questions, please feel free to plug them into the chat.
Oh, and while they put the questions, if you're interested in either an internship or talking to our office, you can reach out to us, 718-458-5367. Call the office, ask how to get in contact with the chief of staff, and they will give you her email, and you can send your resume and in a request, for an internship. We work with CUNY very well. And follow me on social media. I generally respond to it myself. Catalina Cruz NY. Make sure you put the NY in there, and it's in Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and I have a TikTok, but it's only to watch funny videos. So.
Thank you so much. All right. So, do you mind repeating the number once more? I believe it's
718-458-5367.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we do have a message from our career advisor, Rocio Reynoso. If you need help preparing for an internship, please reach out to Rocio Rosado. And then for our final question is, did you have any professional experiences unrelated to this service that allowed you to excel in your current position?
I worked retail in college. And I think retail is a whole other animal that basically teaches you how to sell certain things. And it taught me the skills of, granted, when I became a lawyer, it taught me the negotiating skills, but the art of selling something, the psychological manipulation really that goes into it, it becomes very useful in my line of work now.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I worked as a restaurant worker too, so I'm kind of on the same boat. Definitely a little bit intense. So I think that's it for our Q&A section. I sincerely want to thank you for really sharing your knowledge, your experience with our students. This has been wonderful. I learned a lot as well. I will go ahead and pass the microphone to our founder of the LHI committee, Tuli Chatterjee, to give her final remarks.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Hano, thank you for sharing your journey, your story. Thank you for all your hard work, your service. You inspire us, Assemblywomen. It's been so nice to hear your journeys and also feel that there is hope. I felt like there is so much of hope, what you kind of mentioned. And what I also loved and what will definitely stay with me, and as I'm sure with all of us, is to make the stage bigger, to make space for everyone, so that even if there is a space and we cannot fit, let's make it the room bigger. It's it's just wow. Thank you. And we can't wait to support you, to kind of reach out to you. And I'm sure many of our students will definitely be there to support your vision, because this is what matters, that we have to help our immigrant population, our undocumented immigrants, those who need us. And I'm so grateful that you've made time for us today. Thank you for your time, service, and for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and stay strong. Getting out of this pandemic for all of us, for a reason or another, is going to be a difficult road, but we are New Yorkers, and we can make it happen. And if anyone wants to reach out, whether it's a constituent service or that internship, and I saw someone ask if it's just for folks who did criminal justice. No, we take interns from a lot of different things. So if you feel like you have skills that you want to share with our community and us, just reach out. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, and much success in whatever you decide is going to be your career.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman.